Gentlemen, it's such a pleasure to be speaking with you today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for this film. Just to start off, now that people are starting to see the film, reactions are coming in. People are loving this film. They're so surprised by it. How are you two feeling going into its wide release coming up?
Horrified. Yeah, I've had that. Joking aside, I have a moment sometimes of feeling like, can't we just put it in a drawer and then like here's we can take it out of the drawer and we watch it, and like if we like it, then maybe we can let our friends and family see it. But the idea of the whole about a lot of people seeing it and having opinions about it and sharing their opinions about it.
It's funny, you know, I get excited. Now I'm thinking, I get excited about it whenever I'm in a theater watching it.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
So but I don't know what that has to say about my yearning for control. And so at least I know what's happening.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So if I was ever in a theater where there was like no reaction, it was dead, at least I would feel like, well, at least I was here to monitor how that went.
Yeah.
But now when there's going to be like
a conversation about the movie.
Yeah, now there's
being led by other people.
Yeah, now there's gonna be like 3,000 theaters, and I can't be at every one that shows every one. So I have to just sort of trust that at 8:10, some group of people is gonna see the movie. I won't see it with them, and then afterwards they're either gonna like it or not like it.
Yeah.
It's that part is horrifying. I will say, seeing it with people has been fucking awesome. The group experience of what I don't know how you saw it, but the group experience of watching this movie, and I've gotten to watch it in Savannah, in London, in LA when we did test screenings. It's quite lovely. And what I think is also quite lovely is people seem to get it. They seem to they seem to latch on to the mixture of tones, and they don't seem, at least as a group, confused by that, which is a real testament to Mark, our director, and our editor.
There's something special, maybe, which was not intended, about a room full of paying customers watching a movie about a room full of paying customers. There's something like there's a feeling of like a nice giggly tension in the room. With that's really fun. It's
really fun.
Yeah,
and so I agree with Will. I don't think we ever intended to write a movie that was fun. Like, I think we did. I think it was fun for us. And I do think that fun is artistically contagious from the artist to the people watching. I do think it's contagious, but I was a little bit surprised by that to a certain extent. And I'm relieved by it, obviously.
Life more often imitates art than the other way around in terms of like people paying customers watching a movie about paying customers. But I do think that the satire that you've written about food culture, I think a lot of people are really interested in that. And I think that's why it's really resonating with a lot of people. But I saw the film in Toronto. To answer a question you asked before, Seth, I saw it in Toronto at one of its TIFF screenings, and
not the crowd, premiere, another one, but
not the premiere. To be honest, it might have been better because I saw it at a later night screening than the premiere. Yeah. So it was a packed house, super excited group. And one thing that I noticed about it is that this film is such an ideal audience experience film because there are so many surprises. You really cannot predict where this story is going. And I'd love to pick your brains about that. I know you guys had that structure of, setting the story alongside the dishes in a meal, the courses in a meal. Yeah. But did you guys have an idea of what the events in this movie were going to be, like the ways in which the chef messes with the people, or were there some surprises that you guys discovered as you were writing it out?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I think we knew, as the characters know pretty early on, that we kind of know where it's going to end in a way, how it's going to end. It's not going to end well, right? I mean, I guess there's a possibility that they're going to get away, but at a certain point, that even there's inevitability that that's not going to happen.
Well, the funny, I would say, to answer your question, it's twofold. Yeah. We knew basically where things were going to happen and how surprising they were going to be. But then Will and I would surprise each other whenever we would sort of go off and write our 15 pages. Will would send it to me. I would do a pass, write my 15 pages, but I would read what Will did and I would be surprised and I would send it to Will and I would get to have my fun that wasn't a part of our outline that would be surprising to Will. So I do think that just lent itself to being surprising. And I also think that, Will and I, we kind of want to make moves that maybe to a certain extent an audience has an expectation of what should happen. Well, how do you undercut that in an interesting way? Like our main character tells our other main character, this is going to happen. Tells her that pretty much towards the middle of the movie. That's what happens. How it all ends up that way is what's interesting and surprising. A lot of the surprises has to do with subverting expectations of what people might expect.
Well, I know that between the two of you, you're more of the foodie, and it was your experience that sort of inspired the initial inspiration for the film. I'm curious for you, which cog in the machine of the sort of cuisine culture do you think is maybe more responsible for like the ridiculous nature of it? Do you think it's more of the chefs of the world who sneer at like the lesser thans, or do you think it's more like the Tylers of the film who like ascribe meaning to every single thing that they eat?
In some ways, it is a kind of, it's hard to say. It's a bit of a chicken or egg, or it's a sort of a mutually destructive ecosystem in a way, because I think that the chefs of the world, while they have some disdain for the Tylers of the world for ruining the mystery of their art, and which used to be this very closely guarded secret knowledge that only chefs knew about, and the world didn't seem to even be very interested in. And now it's, there's a whole cottage industry of television shows, and documentaries, and books about this world, and websites. And so I think the chef has some disdain for that. Yet at the same time, would they really, if they could get in a time machine, go back to 1970, where a cook was just considered some person behind a door in a room who made your food, and it was brought out to you, you ate it, you never thought about who they were, you didn't care about who they were or how they made it, you weren't interested. That's really what the world used to be. And it was sort of like, you became a cook as a way of like avoiding joining the military or going to prison. You know what I mean? It was like, you hear interviews with a lot of cooks from a chefs from an earlier era. It was like, those were their peers, were people like that, really on the margins and fringes of society. And now there are people who come from very affluent backgrounds, who are very well schooled, who even may have a background in science or art or engineering, who this is a perfectly legitimate career that they can tell their parents about. It's definitely like made the life of a chef and the life of a cook, the quality of life, much better. And it's good for business that foodies are interested. But at the same time, you feel like, fuck these people who think they know my world. So it's like a self-sustaining thing. And it's like, it's hard to say who is initially responsible for it, or how you step down from that in a way. But it's an interesting question, right? Yeah. Chicken or egg.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've done so much thinking about this and processing so much of this world. Seth, how do you collaborate with Will to enter that world and then sort of throw in your ideas to collaborate on a satire about it?
Are you familiar with hell?
Vaguely.
It's hell. No, this is the first time we've spoken in 4.5 years. No, I have an appreciation for the chef as artist. And I also have a deep appreciation for the extent that an artist will go to be excellent. And I understand and believe it's true how a restaurant like this can push its people to exhaustion, but also how people would want to be a part of an amazing institution such as this. I think when you can map Hawthorne onto a lot of creative artistic endeavors. So for me, that's actually was quite easy, because I can see Hawthorne in a lot of different places around. Like, I'm sure the greatest ballet company in the world, that's a Hawthorne. At one of the most prestigious late night comedy shows in the world, that can be a Hawthorne. So for me, that's actually quite easy. It's the harder thing for me is really like, really getting in tune to the language and the specifics, but Will's also quite good at that. So, and we also had amazing people on our movie who were consultants, like Dominique Crenn, who's a 3 Michelin star chef. So that wasn't too hard for me.
Well, Seth is also, he can't say it, but I will. He's just a brilliant writer and a brilliant satirist in particular. So you can kind of plug him, even when we worked together at The Onion, he was always this way. You can plug him into an area or a subculture like that. And as long as Seth understands the people involved, what do they want? What do they need? Yeah. What's the thing that drives them crazy? What's the thing that makes them tick? As long as he knows that, and as part of figuring out what that is, then the details are almost become not kind of inessential in a way. It's really what drives their behavior, and he can write that.
Yeah, I do see that. I do see the menu as quite an oniony type movie. It's very specific about a specific culture, and everyone inhabiting it is actually quite sad.
Absolutely. And speaking of your time at the Onion, gentlemen, last question. You two are master satirists, and you've done so much satire.
Where's our award?
Yeah. Well, hey, there's some discussion for this film in the screenplay category.
I just want the Master Satirist Award. That's all.
Don't be so coy. But I have to ask, does it sometimes become difficult these days to create effective satire when it feels like the world continues to self-fulfill its own satire?
No, it's not. And anyone who says it is wrong. And you can quote.
We will.
Because the world always gets crazier and crazier. So you always have to figure out as a satirist, what's the sort of angle in on that craziness. And I think what makes The Onion really effective is that it's never the first thought of how to make fun of, satirize something. It's the second or third thought that someone might be having that they don't have quite crystallized in their brain, that your story is going to make them go, oh yeah, that. And the, oh yeah, that, if you can get to that idea, that's always interesting and not expected.
Yeah, and also like the world has gotten crazier in some ways, and in other ways, 300 years ago, you'd have 10 kids and 8 of them would die because people thought like witches caused the Black Plague or something. So like the world was pretty crazy in earlier eras too. It's just like what's crazy changes, and what's crazy now, I guess, is a particularly crazy, heightened media environment.
Which you can then satirize, and then so that's another angle that's been created by society and culture that you can then make fun of. So it's not so much the reality, it's a different, what's the different facet of reality that really hasn't been blown up yet, that you can then blow up.
You guys are such a fun bunch. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on the film. It's truly a wonderful, and I can't wait for everybody to see it in a crowd.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.